Stella and Martha were two beautiful young women living in a bustling African city. Life had not been kind to them. Both came from poor families and had to fend for themselves from a young age. They were inseparable friends, sharing laughter, tears, and secrets. Work was hard to find, however. They managed to get a job as a bartender in a nightclub. They didn't get paid well, so they gained extra cash spending time with clients. It was not what they had dreamed of, but survival pushed them into this life. One evening, Stella and Martha dressed up and went to work. It was loud with music, laughter, and clinking glasses. As they moved through the crowd, Stella caught the attention of a man named Frank. He was handsome, confident, and seemed different from the others. They struck up a conversation after she served him drink, and by the end of the night, Frank invited Stella to spend time with him. After their first meeting, Frank couldn't stop thinking about Stella. He began seeing her regularly. He was in love and supported her financially to ensure she wouldn't need to meet other men. Stella felt a shift in her life, and she was getting comfortable and enjoying the love and attention that Frank was giving her. One day, as she sat with Martha, she shared her thoughts. "Martha, do you ever think about stopping? How long can we keep doing this?" Stella asked. Martha sighed and shrugged. "Stop thinking so much, Stells. This is life. It's all we know. Money doesn't come easy, and the way we make it, it's not the same for everyone. But for us, it works." "Do you have any other way of making money?" she asked. Stella smiled faintly, unsure if France's attention would last. She hadn't told Martha about Frank yet. She wasn't sure if she should. He was different, maybe, but how long could he be different? How long before he tired of her too, she thought. Over time, Frank grew serious about Stella. He met her family, and soon after, they married in a beautiful wedding ceremony. Stella's life changed completely. She no longer went out at night and focused on building her new life. But through it all, she and Martha remained close friends and visited Stella often, logically, but sometimes her words hinted at jealousy. "Are you sure you want to stick to one man, Stella? There are plenty of rich men who would pay well to see you," Martha would say. Her voice low, almost a tease, but there was an edge to it, one that felt like a challenge. "I want to honor my marriage, Martha," Stella said, her voice soft but firm. "Please don't bring this up again." Martha studied her for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "You think Franc is going to stick around? You think he won't get bored of you?" Stella exhaled slowly, her thoughts a jumbled mess. Little did Stella know, the peace she had found would soon be tested in ways she could never imagine. Stella's marriage to Frank brought joy and stability. Not long after their wedding, Stella became pregnant. Frank was overjoyed and pampered her during the pregnancy. When their baby boy was born, Frank gifted Stella a brand new car to help her manage her new life as a mother. Life seemed perfect, but cracks began to show in Martha's behavior. She started visiting Stella more frequently, often making odd comments. "Frank stays out late a lot. Are you sure he's just working?" she would say, planting seeds of doubt. "You know there's a wealthy man who's been asking about you. He'd pay handsomely to see you, and I'd get a nice commission too." Stella frowned. "Martha, stop. Frank trusts me, and I won't do anything to break that trust. Please don't bring these things to my house." Martha would laugh it off, but her jealousy grew. She envied Stella's new life and the happiness she had found. Yet, she hid her feelings behind a mask of friendship. One day, Frank and Stella attended a family wedding. The celebration was lively, with dancing, music, and delicious food. Martha was helping serve food and drinks, casting glances at Stella throughout the evening. The next day, tragedy struck. Stella struggled all night feeling off. The kind of off that didn't quite settle with sleep. Her stomach churned, and she felt a growing heaviness in her chest that no amount of water or rest seemed to alleviate. But as the hours passed, the pain in her body worsened, and a cold sweat broke out across her skin. By the time Frank could barely get her out the door and into the car, she was already slipping in and out of consciousness, unable to speak, unable to fight against the sudden onslaught of sickness. At the hospital, the doctors said she was already gone by the time they arrived. Stella had passed away suddenly, leaving Frank devastated. The news left Frank in a numb daze. The world felt wrong. It felt unreal. As he sat in the sterile hospital room, staring at the empty space. The doctors later discovered she had been poisoned. Frank was heartbroken, unable to fathom how this could happen. The family was torn apart by grief, became consumed with anger. Their pain turned to suspicion with accusations and fractured relationships. Rumors spread like wildfire, leaving the entire family and the community in a state of disbelief. At Stella's funeral, emotions ran high. As the pallbearers carried her casket, something strange happened. The casket suddenly jerked, veering toward Martha again and again. It wasn't a shift from the men carrying the weight. No, this was something far more peculiar. Gasps echoed through the crowd as the pallbearers tried to steady it, struggling to regain control. The mourners shifted uneasily, some stepping back, others watching with wide, incredulous eyes. The whispers began almost immediately. They're suspicious toward Martha. "Did you see that? Why did it move like that? It's not supposed to. Was she involved?" Martha stood near the back of the procession, her face pale, her eyes wide as the casket nearly collided with her. The crowd's attention turned to her immediately, their eyes sharp with suspicion. She seemed just as stunned as everyone else. Martha's life took a dark turn after the funeral, and the whispers only grew louder. Rumors continued to resurface. But instead of retreating, instead of hiding from the relentless stares and half-hidden glances, she began growing closer to Frank, setting the stage for a story that would haunt her forever. Her visits to Frank became more frequent. She would help with the baby, cook meals, and spend time comforting Frank. To some, it seemed natural. She had been Stella's best friend, and she claimed she was helping out of love for her late friend. But others were suspicious of her motives. Within 2 months, Martha became pregnant with France's child. She pressured him to marry her, arguing that it was best for the child and the family. Frank, still grieving and overwhelmed, agreed. He visited her family, paid the bride price, and brought her into his home as his new wife. But their marriage was far from happy. Not long after their wedding, Martha suffered a miscarriage, and while she was crushed by the loss, she tried to bury the pain. She told herself it was just bad luck, something that could happen to anyone. But when it happened again, another pregnancy, another devastating loss, her optimism started to crack. The second miscarriage felt worse, harder to process. She tried to stay strong, to act as though it was just another cruel twist of fate. But deep down, it was starting to feel like something more. Still, she didn't want to admit that it could be anything more serious, anything that might permanently take away the one thing she so desperately wanted. Then, the third time came. Another pregnancy, another miscarriage. All of them happened at 4 months. 4 months. Just when she thought she was safe, just when she could begin to imagine a future with a child. The pain was unbearable, but Martha kept her emotions in check. She knew how devastated Frank was too, and didn't want to show him just how much it was breaking her. but each loss chipped away at her, and she felt herself growing more and more isolated in her grief. There was something about this recurring tragedy that felt impossible to ignore anymore. It wasn't just bad luck. Something was wrong, but no one, not the doctors, not the specialists, could offer any answers. They ran test after test, examined everything they could think of, but each result came back with no clear explanation. The doctors told them everything seemed fine physically, that sometimes things just didn't work out. Martha started to feel like there was something wrong with her. If the doctors didn't have answers, maybe the fault was hers. Maybe her body just couldn't do what it was supposed to. But how long could they keep pretending that this wasn't something bigger than bad luck? The weight of the repeated loss was taking its toll. Frank and Martha both held on to each other, but the strain was becoming too much. In their private moments, they'd look at one another, silently asking the same question, why? But the answers, if they existed, felt forever out of reach. Martha, once hopeful and full of life, became a shadow of herself. Every time she learned she was pregnant again, the joy would quickly turn into an overwhelming sense of dread, as if she already knew how it would end. Martha began to fear something was wrong. Desperate for answers, she visited a ritual practitioner woman in secret. The woman listened carefully and conducted some mystical ceremony before delivering her chilling advice. "Leave the marriage," the woman said. "The spirit of the one you wronged will not let you stay." Martha's heart raced. She refused to leave the marriage, but deep down, she knew what the woman meant. Stella's spirit was not at peace, and it would not rest until the truth came to light. Martha tried to ignore the ritual practitioner's warning, but strange things began happening. One day, as she returned from the market, her thoughts occupied with the tasks ahead of her day. The moment she stepped onto the path leading to her home, she froze in her tracks. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her breath hitched. There stood a figure. It was her. Standing by the gate to her house was Stella's ghost, her face pale and sorrowful. Martha dropped her bag of groceries and screamed with fear, "Leave me alone! Leave me alone!" as she clutched her head. The distant murmur of voices from her neighbors, who still hadn't fully understood the gravity of the situation, as they rushed to her aid. But they saw nothing. "What is it?" one asked. She cried, her voice cracking, wild with panic. Martha pointed as she looked up once more, willing the vision to disappear, but the emptiness in front of her mocked her. There was nothing. Nothing but at the empty space, trembling. "She was right there," she cried, but the neighbors couldn't see anyone. "Who was there?" one asked. "It was Stella," she replied. Confused, all they did was glance at her, pitying looks, before turning their attention to the groceries scattered on the ground. They handed her the fruits and vegetables, nodding as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "It's all right, Martha. You're just tired. Go inside. Get some rest," one of them said gently, as though she were a child who'd imagined it all. But Martha's heart knew better. It wasn't just an exhaustion. The haunting didn't stop there. One night, as Martha and Frank were watching television, Martha suddenly jumped to her feet, her face pale, eyes wide with terror. "She's in the TV! Stella is there, looking at me!" Her voice was high-pitched, frantic, a raw panic that sent a chill down Francis' spine. He spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for her, trying to steady her. "Martha, calm down." "What are you talking about?" His eyes darted to the screen, expecting to see some sort of glitch, a shadow or a flicker. But the television was just showing a regular program, nothing out of the ordinary. A commercial played, a cheerful jingle blaring from the speakers. nothing to explain the sheer horror etched across her face. "Martha, there's nothing there. Look." France's voice was pleading now, his hands on her shoulders, trying to bring her back to him, to bring her back from the edge. But Martha wasn't listening. She was shaking, her eyes glued to the screen, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "No, you don't understand. She's right there, right there." She pointed at the screen, her finger trembling with every word. "She's staring at me. Her face—" France's gaze flicked to the television again, but it was just a smiling woman selling a new cleaning product. There was nothing remotely unsettling about it. The room felt suffocating in its silence, and for a moment Frank wondered if perhaps his wife had finally snapped, if the constant grief and the tragedies had driven her to the brink of madness. "Martha, please," he said, his voice trembling now. "There's nothing there, I swear. Look, I'll turn the TV off, okay? You're just seeing things." Another time, as she showered, she saw Stella's face in the bathroom mirror. She ran out of the bathroom soaking wet, clutching a towel, and screamed for Franc. When Frank and his friend checked the bathroom, they found nothing unusual. Frank began to worry about Martha's mental health, but he couldn't deny that something strange was happening. As he sat in the dimly lit parlor of his home, his hands clenched tightly together in his lap, his brow furrowed with concern. If she was this shaken, something had to be wrong. But what? What could explain her frantic claims about Stella's ghost, about things no one else could see? And Frank knew that, despite his own skepticism, he couldn't keep dismissing it any longer. He made his decision to go to visit Martha's family. He needed their support. And more than that, they needed to understand what they were dealing with. Perhaps together they could help her. There was something she wasn't telling him, something beyond her own terror. He had to get to the bottom of it. The next day, Frank visits the family. He explains what's been happening at home. How Martha ran out from the bathroom because she's claiming to see Stella's ghost. Martha's mother, a woman whose concern for her daughter was apparent in every line of her face, reached out and placed a trembling hand on Charles's arm, Martha's brother. I've been worried too. I don't know what to make of it. At first I thought she might just be overwhelmed, but now I'm not sure anymore. Something is happening, for sure." They all sat in a tight circle, their faces a mix of disbelief and deep worry. Charles, always the practical one, leaned forward. "We've heard the rumors, Frank, that she's been seeing things, that she's claiming to see Stella's ghost. I don't understand." "So it's really happening?" Frank hesitated. He could feel the weight of his own uncertainty pressing against him. He didn't have all the answers, and part of him wanted to tell them that it was just stress, that she needed rest and time to recover. But deep down, he knew it wasn't that simple. "I can't say I understand it all," Frank said slowly, his voice quiet, almost as if he were speaking to himself. "But something is definitely off with Martha. There is an air about her, like she was being watched, like something was following her, and she spoke about Stella's ghost. I don't know, but it wasn't just a bad dream. It was real to her." Martha's father, a quiet man with a deeply furrowed brow, said, his voice filled with determination, "We need to make sure she's safe. If this is something beyond our understanding, then we need to find someone who can help." Frank nodded, feeling a surge of both relief and dread. He had been waiting for someone, anyone, to say the words, to make a plan. As they stood, the silence that followed was heavy with uncertainty, but it was clear now that they were all in this together. They would do whatever it took to help Martha, even if it meant confronting the unknown. With that, the family prepared to face whatever waited for them at Martha's home. The tension thick in the air, and the unease hanging heavy like a storm about to break. They would face whatever haunted Martha, together. Martha's behavior became increasingly erratic. She avoided staying inside alone, spending most days outside. One day, she claimed Stella's ghost was chasing her and ran out shouting, "Leave me alone. I will talk. I will tell them everything." Frank could not see the ghost. Martha then requested a family gathering. Frank invited Martha's and Stella's families to come over for a meeting in his home. On the day of the gathering, Martha sat trembling, knowing that the time had come to reveal her secret. When everyone was seated, Frank turned to Martha. "You said you had something important to tell us. What is it?" Martha took a deep breath, her eyes filled with tears. I'm the reason Stella is dead," she confessed. "I poisoned her. I was jealous of her happiness, her life, her marriage. I thought I could take her place." Gasps filled the room. Stella's family was devastated, and chaos erupted as they confronted Martha. Frank was speechless, his heart shattered by the betrayal. Martha's parents hung their heads in shame, unable to defend their daughter. As the families argued and grieved, Martha fell to her knees sobbing. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." The room fell silent as she sobs, and Frank stood up. "You need to leave this house," he said firmly. "You've caused enough pain." Martha left that day with her family. They couldn't defend her, but her parent determined to find a solution. You see, jealousy often creeps in when others achieving milestones we long for, like marriage or success. But it's important to remember that life isn't a race, and we each have our own turn. Just because your friend is married doesn't mean your time won't come. God created us each with a unique timeline. We were born at different moments and will leave this world at different times, so there's no need to compare. Trust that your season is on its way, and in the meantime, focus on your own path. Being happy for others helps bring your own turn closer. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the story and learned something as well as we enjoyed writing it. We really appreciate your support. Please like the video and subscribe to our channel. It would make our day. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until then, see you in the next video.